Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for being here. My name is Anna Tomo. I am with Sane Energy Project and the No NBK Pipeline Coalition. If you missed my earlier announcement, feel free to introduce yourself in the chat. You can say your name, your pronouns, and where you're calling in from today. We are so thrilled to welcome you to the What the Frack, WTF Town Hall. And we're going to talk a lot about the big announcements that are happening for our campaign, how proud we are of everyone in this movement and all the amazing people power that we've built and what comes next. So maybe my co-host just give me some thumbs up if we're ready to get started. Cool. So first we're gonna do just a quick check-in, and you can check in by giving a little emoji react in the chat or on your screen. So if you are a part of the gas bill strike, you can go ahead and put, oops, sorry about that, guys, put a little celebration emoji on and let us check you out if you're part of the gas bill strike already. Awesome, Lee, cool. I see some other people. Some folks are giving the surprised emoji for if you are new to the campaign and want more info, we're gonna get that info to you. And then if you've participated in an event against the North Brooklyn Pipeline already, such as an action, a teach-in, a strike social, or any of the amazing things we've done, go ahead and put a heart on your screen if that is you. Cool, seeing a lot of hearts and seeing some familiar faces as well. Awesome. So good to have you all today. Thank you for joining us. So our agenda for today, as I briefly mentioned, is that we are welcoming you right now, so feel welcomed. We're gonna very quickly go over the campaign and just refresh on what the North Brooklyn Pipeline is and why we are fighting against it. We're gonna go over our recent developments, most specifically the Public Service Commission vote and what's going on with our lawsuit in the National Grid facility. And then the main focus of this town hall today is how we are going to take action together. So if you can, please stay till the end, and we're going to have brief breakout rooms where we can plan and brainstorm and dream up together how we can grow our grassroots movements and get more people involved in fighting this pipeline, fighting for environmental justice, and sticking together as communities. So that's our agenda for today. Also just want to note that this meeting is being recorded. So if you know folks who want to be on but can't be on today, we will have it up live streamed on the No NBK Pipeline Coalition Facebook page. And we can send you the recording if you would like that. So what is the North Brooklyn Pipeline? A lot of folks on this call have been fighting against this pipeline for a while now, so probably could do this slide just as well as I'm about to, but basically, the North Brooklyn Pipeline is a fracked gas pipeline, and it starts here where my mouse is in Brownsville, and goes all the way up through these neighborhoods in Bed-Stuy, Bushwick, East Williamsburg, and Greenpoint. It's a network that ships fracked gas from Pennsylvania to this LNG depot. And that's here where the red star is kind of at the top of this map. Some of the reasons that we're fighting against this pipeline is, firstly, it's a public health concern. So methane and fracked gas, which is what this pipeline is carrying, contains carcinogens or cancer-causing substances. It's very dangerous for the communities that live in these neighborhoods. There's also a risk of benzene, radon, and we know that there are only two kinds of pipelines that have already leaked and pipelines that are going to leak, right? There's no safe pipelines. So the substances that are inside pipelines will inevitably come out into the surrounding environments as well, and there is some risk of explosion in pipelines. These are all things that we want to avoid. It's also a climate crisis concern. Methane is the primary component of fracked gas, and it's a worse greenhouse gas than CO2. I believe the number is 86 or more times more potent in terms of climate change than CO2, which is horrifying. especially considering the recent IPCC report that came out highlighting specifically how important it is to transition away from fracked gas and methane use. So it's very clear now that if we want to have a livable and healthy future, we need to get off of fracked gas now. And it also, this pipeline targets BIPOC and working class communities. So you can see on the map here that it's built through majority Black and brown and working class communities. And this is not an accident. It furthers environmental racism, legacies of environmental racism that communities in Brooklyn have been withstanding for many years. And it's also, this pipeline was built against strong community opposition. So we have over 40,000 public comments in about this. And we have state opposition, state government opposition, federal government opposition, most recently with Senator Chuck Schumer coming out against the pipeline. And then in the local elected officials realm, we have unanimous opposition in the city council as well. So this just goes to show how much people in Brooklyn and New York City do not want this pipeline. So now I'm going to pass off the next slide to Elizabeth.
Hi, so zooming out a little bit, this pipeline is part of a larger network of fracked gas infrastructure, executing this dangerous and destructive practice across the East Coast, as you can see in this map. Fracked gas from Pennsylvania's Marcellus Shale natural gas reservoirs is transported to New York via the Transco pipeline. The North Brooklyn pipeline currently under construction would link these pipelines to points east in Long Island and New England. It is a transmission pipeline, which means it will not serve the communities affected. Communities that the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation has classified as disadvantaged. It is not necessary to sustain current gas demand. And from Pennsylvania to New York and beyond, these pipelines are not safe. The Frack Tracker Alliance's most recent report on pipeline incidences reported 6,950 total fracking pipeline incidents since 2010, translating to 1.7 incidents per day, a rate that has remained steady for many years, indicating the continuing danger posed to our communities by fracked gas pipelines. We have a ton of information about the disastrous health and environmental effects of fracking, and we could do a whole other in-depth workshop going into more detail about that. So if that's something that you or groups you work with would be interested in, totally let us know in the chat and we would be happy to organize something. Next slide, please. So about National Grid, the company. National Grid is a privately owned, state-regulated monopoly based in London, England. It is one of the largest investor-owned utility companies in the world, bringing in nearly $20 billion of revenue last year. Its primary motive is to deliver value to its shareholders, which they accomplish through building infrastructure like pipelines and transferring those costs to consumers via rate hikes, which must be approved through the state, as we'll discuss a little bit later. Hence the North Brooklyn pipeline and other infrastructure that locks us into greenhouse gas emitting fossil fuels for decades to come. Its CEO, John Pettigrew, who you see here, makes $3,600 per hour. A staggering figure that I think speaks to National Grid's #1 priority, to make its rich executives and shareholders richer at our expense. Next slide.
Hi, I'm JK, she, her. In a stunning example of greenwashing, the sponsor of the climate change conference this fall in Glasgow is our friends National Grid. Conference of the Parties. It's the 26th time that the signatory countries to the Treaty on Climate Change in 1994 have been meeting. And we've gotten to the point where National Grid is now sponsoring this thing. So next slide, please. So we have several targets throughout this campaign against the North Brooklyn pipeline and the associated liquefied natural gas port. The first target is the state of New York. Actually, Andrew Cuomo was pretty much the decider, and he directed his agencies to do his bidding. So we were targeting Cuomo. Now it's Kathy Hochul who is helming the state, but the regulator that sets fees is the Department of Public Service, led by a commission of commissioners, the Public Service Commission. They recently approved a rate increase that we had been intervening in to prevent National Grid from raking in money for the pipeline that hence has thus been built. We also filed tons of comments and did an enormous amount of research on this pipeline and just what the harms were and who was being affected by these harms. We petitioned for public hearings when public hearings were not part of the plan. And we filed a lawsuit against the state of New York on the air permit. And that lawsuit involved the Department of Environmental Conservation, which is another agency that decides whether something is in accord with our environmental laws. So on both of those scores, both regulators, we targeted them. Next slide, please. Okay, excuse me. The next target, New York City. So New York City was a target mainly because the fire department of New York had passed legislation back in the 70s against transporting liquefied natural gas by truck. And one of the things that National Grid announced in the beginning of this application for the construction and the increase in the size of the liquefied natural gas port was to be able to transport this gas by truck. In order to make the gas into a liquid, it has to be cooled to 261 degrees below zero. So if a truck had an accident and it were punctured, not only would the gas asphyxiate everybody in the neighborhood, it would also cause immediate frostbite and scalding. So we targeted the fire department, we targeted the Department of Buildings, we targeted the Mayor's Office of Sustainability, and of course we targeted the mayor, the city council, and the community boards. And the city council, I must say, the council members all along the path of the pipeline have stood up for their community and decried the pipeline. Community Board 1 in particular in Greenpoint has been heroic and outspoken and stable and solid against the pipeline. So what did we do in the city? We petitioned again, we held meetings, we did a lot of research, and we brought a lawsuit against the city for the idea that liquefied natural gas should be permitted, especially since it was specifically outlawed in the 70s after a terrible explosion that killed 40 people. We did direct action and we did tons of rallies. Our third and most egregious target, of course, is National Grid itself. Their slogan is "Here with you, here for you." They are the gift that keeps on giving. And as far as national greed, which is our favorite term, we've done direct action. We've had people actually put their bodies on the line and lay on the pipeline, lay on the site of the construction. 2 lawsuits against this corporation. We've put the word out on how their expansion would hurt the community, and we cross-examine them in the rate hike proposal and at the community board meeting. And most of all, we've declared a strike. So we have about 300 people. We'll talk about that in a future slide. We have 300 people saying we will not pay to be poisoned. Next slide.
Hey y'all, my name is Monica. Thanks JK for all of that. I'm just gonna talk a little bit about some of the tactics that we've done really quickly. So we're building this powerful movement, right? Where it's not just this one-off thing we're here to fight for the future too. After this, we defeat this pipeline and the LNG port. Next slide, please. So we've been organizing from Brownsville to Greenpoint, and we're looking at not just the environmental issues here, but also connecting the dots to housing, racial and economic justice. We work in solidarity with groups like Brownsville Residents Green Committee and Frack Out of BK Coalition. They're working in Brownsville and in Bushwick mostly, doing direct action and outreach and education there with their communities. Please support and follow them. There's their tags right there, Beeville Green and Frack Out of BK. And I think I saw Ade and Jen in the chat too. So if there's anything you want to add about things, updates that you want to share in the chat, please do. We've also supported, done solidarity actions with the Line 3 fight. Right now, it's a big day for actions with that in DC and constantly ongoing in Minnesota and rural Minnesota. So please, please support Indigenous-led battles happening there. They're really close to the deadline there and need all the support they can get. So fight Line 3 with them. Next slide, please. Yes, so we've done everything from bike rides along the pipeline route, dance blockades, street theater and brass bands at the construction sites. We've done mural actions and art builds and rallies, all to draw attention and to build community. Next slide, please. We're focusing a lot on community outreach and education. We've done teach-ins online as well as at community gardens and parks, at schools and rooftops, in people's backyards. We're doing phone banking with the Strike Social right now to get the word out about the gas bill strike. We're trying to connect to the land too and doing cleanups and learning about community spaces that locals have been working to carve out and to protect in our neighborhoods. Next slide, please. And as JK mentioned before about all of these points of intervention with political advocacy that we've been doing, pushing for public hearings to happen, crafting these informed comments for people to write in, aligning with and pressuring electeds too. So we're working in every single avenue that we can. Next slide, please. And as JK mentioned too, that we've been doing direct action. So we're working with all the tools in the toolbox here, trying to pressure in all ways and stopping construction with a series of blockades where we've successfully shut them down all day, several days in a row, as a way to cost them money and to let them know that we will not let them build this pipeline in our neighborhood. Last slide, please. The last slide for me. And then for our current tactics right now, where we really need all your support is in this gas bill strike, which folks are going to talk about soon after me. And then with the lawsuit too, that folks are going to talk about just after this. So just to give you a breath of all this work that we've been doing is this movement with thousands of people that have been involved in this, and now where we are at right now. And I'm going to hand off to Benny. Thank you.
Hi, this is Benny. So I'm going to talk about what just happened in this proceeding called the rate case, this big decision made by the state. That's sort of kind of what brought us here today for this town hall. So there's two big elements that are in play now. There's a rate case and a lawsuit. And the rate case is when the state's Public Service Commission decides if a corporate utility can raise our monthly bills to pay for investments into building infrastructure. And then, as Elizabeth said earlier, that's how companies like National Grid make a profit, by raising our rates and then also receiving a rate of return on those investments. And the lawsuit, which will be spoken about in detail after this, our communities are suing National Grid for their illegal construction of their LNG facility, liquefied natural gas, at the apex of the North Brooklyn pipeline, which is in Greenpoint. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the rate case next, if we go to the next slide. So rate case. PSC stands for Public Service Commission. And to reiterate, this is a little bit confusing. The Public Service Commission is a panel, basically a commission of 7 people who are at the head of the Department of Public Service. So you might hear PSC, Public Service Commission, and DPS, which is Department of Public Service. So they are directly related. The Public Service Commission, the PSC, heads the Department of Public Service. And so what happened on August 12th is that the Public Service Commission voted yes on the proposal to raise our gas bills to pay for the North Brooklyn pipeline. It was a unanimous vote, so all 7 of these people you see on the right voted yes for this proposal. One good thing that came out of this was that they declared during the meeting that the CLCPA, which is the Climate Leadership and Citizens Protection Act, which is the really groundbreaking climate law with emissions reductions goals that was passed in July of 2019. And these commissioners said on August 12th that the CLCPA does apply to all rate cases, which was a really important thing that happened. But the problem here is that they said that this particular rate case, this outcome, does comply with the CLCPA, when in fact it does not. And we very strongly disagree with that. So if we go to the next slide, I'm going to talk a little bit about what exactly is in this rate case and why are we upset about the outcome. So what will we be paying for? Now, the meat of what we're paying for is here, these giant numbers, is all of the National Grid's investments, their capital investments that they're making over the course of the next 3 years. And it adds up to $1.9 billion. And these are investments into gas infrastructure. They call it natural gas. We know that the word natural gas is a marketing term. This is fracked gas. And within that $1.9 billion is $128 million for the North Brooklyn pipeline, which is what we've centered a lot of this campaign around. And then you can see $600 million for replacing old pipes, lots of investments into the gas system. Now, at the bottom here, we see another thing that's really important, and that is a little bit unique about this rate case and debatable whether or not it's a good thing. So we see $264 million here, and in the pink bracket, all of those projects there are things that we could potentially have to pay for a few years down the line, projects, if a, quote, independent consultant decides that those projects are needed for the gas system to work and to be reliable, which would be using the Public Service Commission's terminology. And within that, if you take a look there, you can see that's where the liquefied natural gas trucking, that's the LNG vaporizer expansion. This is like the head of the black snake, the Greenpoint Depot. This is where a lot of these projects that they want to do to expand, that's where this money might go. So again, this is very confusing, but it's really important to note that the gas bills are already going up, but they might go up even more to pay for more infrastructure, gas infrastructure investments, if the independent consultant says that they're needed. And so who's going to select the independent consultant? That's a huge question. And unfortunately, what it says in this rate case proposal that was just accepted is that the independent consultant is selected by the Public Service Commission along with National Grid. So that means they're going to select somebody from the gas industry. They're going to select somebody who is probably siding with the gas industry. And that could be a big problem. So it could just be delaying paying for these things. So that's a lot of information. And if we go to the next slide, we'll see, we talked about greenwashing a little earlier. And I want to show, National Grid does greenwashing by sponsoring things like COP26, but also this this agreement that just came out to raise our rates is also an example of greenwashing. If we look at some of the things that the public service commissioners and National Grid said in response when they voted yes on this proposal. So on the left here, we see the ALJ, which stands for Administrative Law Judge. He was the judge who presided over the rate case proceeding. He said, quote, the capital projects, that means North Brooklyn Pipeline, LNG vaporizer expansion, et cetera, the things we're fighting, do not disproportionately burden disadvantaged communities. So that was part of their rationale for approving this case and for saying that it met the mandates of the CLCPA by saying that these projects don't actually harm Black and Brown communities. They do not disproportionately. And we're saying, no, that is a lie. That is environmental racism. Commissioner Maggiore, this was one of my favorite quotes. He said, I'm not sure on what basis I could reasonably say no to this proposal. Commissioner John Howard, who is the head of the Public Service Commission, said, called this rate case agreement a gift that will keep on giving. And then one of the sentiments that was expressed by all of the commissioners is summed up here by Commissioner Valesky on the right. He said, I believe that this order, meaning this proposal, this rate hike, does further the objectives of the CLCPA. And that's something they all said. They said, every single one of them said, this rate hike is in line with the CLCPA. It follows all the legal mandates, and it is putting us in direction to meet the emissions reductions of the CLCPA. That is a lie. That is just flat out wrong, and that is proven by, that's why we showed you those numbers before, $1.9 billion invested into gas infrastructure. No commitments from National Grid, zero commitments from the company to make any emissions reductions. There is nothing in this 200-page agreement to raise our rates that says we, National Grid, commit to reducing our emissions by this much percent over the course of this rate plan. Nothing. Just a few lines committing to more energy efficiency, doing this thing with the independent consultant, et cetera, et cetera. So this is greenwashing, and this is very dangerous. And it's important, it's essential that we, the communities that are fighting this, create the narrative about what this proposal really means, and we don't let these powerful public service commissioners create the narrative for us, because they are creating a narrative of greenwashing. So that's a lot of information. It's very complicated, but those are the most important things. And I think next I'm going to send it to Kim to talk about the lawsuit.
Thanks so much, Benny. Yeah, a lot of this stuff at the Public Service Commission, they're so used to being this like very opaque industry that nobody knows about. Like, we learned about it from allies, Alliance for a Green Economy, who were fighting them. And we really realized that they have a lot of power in the state. And so it's really important, especially a lot of pipeline fighters that were fighting FERC for a long time. And they were just this weirdo agency that nobody knew about until we shined a light on them. So it's important we keep shining our light. I'm going to talk about another tactic that we're using to fight this pipeline and fight National Grid's abuse of our communities and abuse of our economics and racial justice in our communities. And so right now we are suing National Grid. We have 2 lawsuits, and we are partnering with an organization called the University Network for Human Rights and PACE Environmental Litigation Clinic to sue National Grid on 2 counts. So we're suing National Grid and the state of New York, the DEC, for sort of shooing in their permit at the head, the apex of the North Brooklyn Pipeline, the head of the black snake, as we call it, at that National Grid massive LNG facility. We are suing them because they didn't do appropriate environmental reviews that they are required to do. That lawsuit is pending, and it's going on for quite some time now. So they kind of keep delaying it and delaying it. And then there is another lawsuit that we have that's very vibrant right now. It's against the city of New York for not exercising their power that they have. We sat in meetings with the climate administration of de Blasio's office, and we told them these are exactly the permits that you can decline, that you have the power to decline. This is exactly how those permits are breaking our law. And they chose not to act. And so we decided to sue also the city and National Grid on the grounds of the fact that they are building at that massive apex. It's just this giant storage facility and vaporization facility. And now what they're doing is they're trying to revamp a trucking facility, a liquefied fracked gas trucking facility that's been dormant since the 1970s. And the reason it's dormant is because it's illegal on New York City streets right now to truck LNG. And it's illegal because of a massive explosion of LNG that killed 40 workers in the 1970s. So there's a good reason we want to keep this illegal. And National Grid is now, they're trying to, hedge their bets. They're trying to liquefy all the fracked gas that they possibly can, and make they look at us as a commodity. They don't look at us as a network of communities. So what's wonderful is the judge that looked at our lawsuit issued a temporary restraining order. So the company National Grid is not allowed to continue construction. And they've come and complained to us. If you go to the next slide, one more before that. There we go. This is the attorney for one more after that. Yeah, there you go. One of the attorneys for National Grid is named Christopher Porzio, and in our lawsuit hearing a week ago today, the judge said, I can't lift your restraining order. We have good reason. We have the law on our side. And so what he told us is that his client, National Grid, is losing $60,000 to $80,000 a day. And they need to get this accomplished and get this done and lift this restraining order because they're losing all this money. So what he tried to do was peg my organization and many of ours, many of you are involved with Sane Energy Project, to pay for that along with our co-defendants, our co-complainants, the Cooper Park Resident Council, which is a New York City Housing Authority complex that lives directly across the street from National Grid. And, the folks that we're working with there have seen health hazards and health issues for several decades of their family. So for this multi-billion, multinational corporation to try to peg hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not millions, onto the backs of a small female-led environmental group and a low-income housing complex, it just shows you the terrifying nature that they are willing to throw us under the bus for their profits. Next slide. And I think I will pass it over at this point. Thank you so much.
Hey everybody, my name is Lee Zishi. I'm an organizer with Sane Energy Project. Sorry, it looks like I'm coming to you from the dark, but my apartment lighting is either bright lights that are awful or kind of small lights. But thank you all for being here. And I just want to take a quick moment to pause after we've just heard so much of what we've done. I mean, the communities have really fought back against this billion-dollar corporation, as Kim said, and our state regulators and our city elected officials, not the city council people, but Mayor de Blasio and on Governor Cuomo, have really failed us. And for a lot of us that have been in this fight for a long time, that was really, really difficult. So if you're feeling incredibly angry right now after hearing what Benny just had to say, what came in the rate case, about what everyone said before that about where this pipeline is going, feel free, maybe use some asterisks about what you're feeling right now in the chat, whether that's anger or grief. because we're about to talk about how you can take that anger and grief and build power. So we did absolutely everything right? We built a public record. We had our elected officials join, and Kim put it really great in our Sane Energy email, like Cuomo on his way out the door just gave us the finger. So, we know that corporations only care about money. So we have some strategies that are a little outside of the box, right? We did everything that we could do within the box, right? And they still screwed us over. So we're going to talk a little bit about ways that we can take this amazing power that we've built, that we tried to, target towards these regulatory agencies and they ignored us, how we can really hit National Grid, and how we can kind of disrupt the system as it is, because it only can function if we all participate in it, if we all continue to pay our bills and say, okay, well, we tried, right? We have another tactic up our sleeves, and I'm going to dig in a little bit to that, because look, they only care about money, but we might not have a lot of that, but together we can actually impact that in a lot of different ways. So you can go to the next slide. So I'm not going to go super into this, but I want this to be something that everyone is very aware of. This is kind of a short-term and long-term strategy, but we 100%, the No North Brooklyn Pipeline Coalition, voted to support the bills for public power. And like I said, I'm not going to go super into all the bills, and I'll throw the link in the chat in a little bit. But there is a coalition, a statewide coalition. This is not a Brooklyn thing. This is all across the state. People are fighting to take over the corporate utilities. So that's National Grid, Con Ed. And honestly, we need a lot more volunteer capacity. Almost everybody that is in this coalition, Sane Energy is one of the very few people that has paid staff. So if you are just so angry right now that all you want to do is take over National Grid, let us know in the chat, or I'll also throw in the public power link. But we need a lot of people to not only push our legislators to push bills this year, but there's just a lot of like calling and phone banking and a lot of different things that are necessary for this coalition to succeed. And we're going to need a lot of volunteers to do it. So if right now you're thinking, hey, National Grid should not exist, let us know in the chat, and we'll make sure that you can get plugged into the public power campaign, which is 2 bills. One is allowing an authority that already exists to build renewable energy. We're very slow about building renewable energy right now. That's why National Grid and fossil fuels can get away with continuing to build. And then the second bill is literally to take over National Grid. So if you're really excited about that, and we'll also put our contact info at the end too, we really need you to be a part of that public power campaign. Go to the next slide. And so our most immediate kind of short-term goal, or I say short-term campaign, which we also very much hope building out this campaign will help us build the structures and coalition we need to have that bigger goal of public power, is our gas bill strike. We launched this before the Public Service Commission decision because honestly, we did not have a lot of faith in the Public Service Commission. And so what the gas bill strike is, you can go to the next slide. So the gas bill strike is all about really escalating our fight, right? When we realized that Governor Cuomo and Mayor de Blasio were not going to stop construction, and we did direct action, that was an escalation to actually halt construction and take direct action. And when we had a lot of, feelings that the Public Service Commission was not going to listen to science, was not going to listen to the public, we launched this gas bill strike. And it's all about literally refusing to pay for the pipeline. You can go to the next slide. And one really important thing in the slide previous to this I did not mention is that over 300 people have already done this. So if you're not a part of the strike and you're worried, this is something that is growing and, a very important collective power. And so what the gas bill strike is withholding $66 of your bill. I almost use no gas at all in my apartment just for heating my water, but I still have a bill That's about like $40 to $60 per month. And I often forget it one month. So it's about like $120. So what I did is I paid, when it was say $100, I paid $34 because, and I left $66 unpaid. And that $66 is about what we'll all pay over time for the North Brooklyn pipeline that was just approved. We were originally hoping to influence this decision, but that didn't work. And so we're going to continue this strike because we know that the only thing that National Grid cares about is money. And we've seen strikes like this work before. People had a strike against Con Edison in the 80s, and they actually got money returned to them. I'm not going to go into super detail, but it was pretty much like this awful power plant, Indian Point, leaked, and they were trying to put recovery cost onto consumers instead of making Con Ed pay for it. And so we're doing a very similar thing. We're saying, hell no, we are not going to pay for this pipeline that we submitted thousands of comments against. We're not going to pay for this pipeline that there's significant evidence in this rate case against. And so this is all about taking back our power. And so we have a goal right now of 15,000 people, right? And we're about 300, so that's a long way to go. And you can go to the next slide. And so how do we get to 15,000 people? And I want to say we got to 300 people because there are a lot of people on this call, most of them who are not working for Sane Energy or any organization, but are just regular folks who have like really thrown down in amazing ways for this campaign. And I just want to thank you all. I'm not going to name you all now, but you know who you are. And we've been calling people and getting people to strike because, look, we've all signed a petition before. It's pretty easy. But withholding money, you know, this is an escalation, and it actually takes a little bit of talking through for most people to do that. And if we're going to recruit 15,000 people, we very much need every person on this call and like your 3 best friends and their 3 best friends throwing down for this fight. It takes just a lot of talking to people. And so we have a lot of things coming up that we really need people to participate in if we're going to reach enough people to get 15,000 people to strike. So we've done a lot of flyering already in Brooklyn, but we could be doing so much more. There are so many parks that we haven't gotten to yet, or beaches that we haven't gotten to yet. And we've done almost no flyering. There's been a little bit on Staten Island, but National Grid's territory, the people who are paying for this pipeline, it's Staten Island, it's all of Brooklyn, it's Southeast Queens, it's Long Island. So if you live in any of those places and you're interested in flyering places where people are to let them know what their bills are paying for now, we really need your help doing that. We're also phone banking. You know, we called so many people and talked to them about this strike. And the really exciting thing about that is to not only are we getting people to join the strike, but we're getting people to see how they interact with the energy system in a completely new way. You know, most people don't realize what their National Grid is paying, their National Grid bill is paying for. So we need lots of people to flyer. We need a ton of people to phone bank. And we also need a lot of people who can help lead that, right? You know, Sane Energy is a very, very small nonprofit. The people who have been volunteering for the last 2 years, a part of the North Brooklyn Pipeline Coalition, you know, a lot of us are really tired and we just had this like massive slap in the face. So we really need a lot of new people to join us, and we can train you so that you can lead a phone bank, so that you can lead flyering. But what a lot of this really is just neighbors talking to neighbors. You know, I got a couple guys down the street who are doing construction to join the strike because I just started talking to them while they were like sitting on their break. We want to get posters and banners up everywhere so people know that this is happening. People have also been leaving flyers for their neighbors, and they just stick a little sticky note on it. And it's like, hey, I'm your neighbor down the block, and I've joined the strike and I want you too. So we can help you get flyers. We can help you do all these things. We've also, as Monica mentioned, been doing these really amazing strike socials where we all just get together, we hang out, we have some food. Sometimes people will have some drinks, alcoholic or non, whatever, you know, your preference is. And we have a really good time calling people, because I don't know if anyone, like, I've been organizing for a long time and I still kind of have a lot of anxiety about calling up strangers and talking to them about things. But like when you're next to, you know, Anna and Monica and Benny and JK and Elizabeth and Margot and all these people and Ade, like in Jen, it's so much easier to do this work. So if you have a spot, if it's a backyard, it's a public park where you think, hey, this is a good spot, let us know. We'll do a strike social in your neighborhood. Also, if you belong to an organization, I mean, so much of this is just that people have no idea that their bills are going up to pay for this pipeline. We'd really love for you all to help lead those teach-ins, but we can help train you. We can be there, whatever you need. Like, don't feel like you don't know enough, because you do, and we are totally here to help you. Also, please share on social media. I don't think a lot of people, you know, this is a very hard action because like you pay your bill very much on your own at your computer, you know? So if you're already striking, post about it. Let your friends know, let everyone know why you're doing this. And I think one of the most important things is like, this is only going to be successful if people on this call, if your friends kind of take ownership of it, right? You know, this very small group making tons of calls. We've reached about 300, almost 400 people. But for this to catch fire and really expand, it's all about you owning it. And, you know, we have musicians and we have artists, and that's like so many reasons why we've reached people. But you thinking about like, oh, hey, if I did this cool thing, that would let people know about the strike. Like we are so about that, because for this to be the deep kind of meaningful change, you know, we're taking on a $billion, multi-billion-dollar corporation. We're taking on an agency that has ignored the public. You know, this is risky, and not risky in that we've tried to design it so there's not a lot of risks to the individuals, but this is taking on a system, right? And the way that that is most successful is by everybody kind of owning that as an individual. And so the last slide here is some specific events we have coming up that you can plug into. Tomorrow at 6 p.m., we're going to be flyering at Grand Army Plaza. So if you're like, hey, like I'm a little nervous about flyering in my neighborhood and you want to see what it's like, you can show up. When you can start flyering, you know, there's always so many people going through that area. On Thursday, we're going to have an online phone bank where you can phone bank. We'll give you numbers to call and we'll teach you how to do it. And on Saturday morning, we're going to be flyering at Fort Greene. But we need this happening all over the place all the time. And I really hope everybody can help us with that. We're going to do a Q&A and then a little breakout group if you're able to hang on. And kind of maybe if you have some ideas, you can talk to people about that. But let's first go to Q&A.
So if folks want to put in the chat any questions that you have, we can do a large group. We have a really big group here, so we can, you know, field some of the questions in the chat. And then also, you know, if the conversation seems to continue, we can go into a couple of breakout groups with some of the facilitators of this meeting and get into more nitty-gritty conversation. But let's see what we got. And Anna, I know you were supposed to lead this part, but I reckon that you had some internet things happening. Do you want me to take it over?
It looks like Margot is putting some of the questions in the chat.
Yeah, and my internet is all good now. Thank you, Kim.
Oh, good. Okay, great. I will mute myself.
I'm just going to read off some of the ones that I saw in the chat. And then if folks want to, if the organizers on the call today want to just unmute themselves and answer popcorn style. So the first question is from Lynn. Lynn wants to know, please do discuss the impact on credit score if one does not pay your bill. Who would like to answer this question?
Sure, I can. So one, that you are paying some of your bill. And that the reason that we designed it that way is because there's a lot less risk as long as you pay some of your bill. So right now we are only withholding $66, which is what we'll all pay for the pipeline. And there is almost no risk involved as long as you're paying some of your bill. National Grid's policy, they specifically say that they do not report people or they don't report active accounts. The only time that they report an account to, so the only way it's going to affect your credit score is if National Grid reports it to collections. And National Grid's policy is that they'll only report things to collections if it's an inactive account. So say you left a huge balance and then closed your National Grid account, that's their policy. And since you're paying some of it and it's only $66 that's not unpaid, there's really no incentive for them to go after people with only $66 unpaid, unless they specifically started targeting us as strikers. And if they do that, there's lots of recourses we can take to hold them accountable for that, and know that the coalition is here for you. But the chances of them actually reporting it to a credit or a collections is very, 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 very low.
Thank you, Lee. Amazing answer. Okay, so now we have two questions which I think have kind of the same answer. So Amy says that they cannot withhold their utility bill because it's included in rent. So that means that Amy cannot participate in the strike directly. And then Carol wants to know, do people need to live in the New York City National Grid service area, or can they live in upstate New York National Grid areas or other states? And so the answer to both of these questions is that if you are not able to participate in the strike directly by withholding $66 from your National Grid bill, you can still be of extreme support and service to the organizers of this strike by helping us do outreach. So if you live in New York City, but you can't strike, you can come to our events. You can help hand out flyers. You can talk to your neighbors who might be striking. You could even talk to your landlord if your landlord is interested in striking for the building. There are so many ways that you can still get involved. And then if you need to help us remotely, if you don't live locally in New York City, same thing. You can make calls for us. We have online phone banking sections to kind of take the place of flyering. You can still be doing outreach if you're not able to be with people in person in New York City. There's so many different ways that you can get involved. You could come to our weekly coalition calls. We have calls every Thursday at 4 o'clock. You could help us design graphics. You could make art for the movement. There's very many ways to get involved in spreading the word about the gas bill strike if you're not able to strike yourself. And then Aruni says that I don't know if I have a gas bill. I live in Brooklyn, but only get a Con Ed bill. I'd like to address that.
I could take that. That might mean that you're an all electric building, and because National Grid, because they're a monopoly company, they serve Staten Island, all of Brooklyn, all of Long Island, including the Rockaway Peninsula and parts of Southeast Queens. So it might be possible that you have an all electric building and you don't pay a gas bill, which is great because fracked gas is bad. And we want to move towards renewable energy for our generation. So you can still absolutely help out if you also want to fight for our climate and racial and economic justice and help fight this horrible corporation that does serve your neighbors.
I wanted to add that there are some of us who don't live in National Grid territory. And that didn't stop us from being a big part of the campaign in every possible way that we can be useful. So please feel encouraged, whether you get a gas bill or not, to join us. There's a lot of work to be done, and we welcome you with open arms.
Absolutely. Thank you, Kim. Thank you, JK. Lisa wants to know, is there a message to write on the National Grid bill to make it clear? Good question. Who would like to address that?
So I think one thing that's really important with that is, one, fill out the form, which I don't know if we've shared yet, maybe in the chat. I wasn't following along, but we probably should have put it. So one of the really important things is, if you are striking, please fill out this form so we can keep track. Because one thing, like in press releases, all this kind of stuff, we're letting National Grid know how many people are striking. If you actually pay, say, a physical bill, like 100% write on it. But also there's a number you can call, and there's other ways that you can let National Grid know that you are striking. So if you're on social media, you can tag them. But if they start seeing a lot of people with $66 unpaid, like, they're gonna know what it's for. But it is really important that people fill out the pledge so we can report those numbers and let National Grid know, and New York State, you know, how big this is growing.
Yes, Lee, thank you. C wants to know, when we win this fight and take down National Grid, what will we use as our next resource for gas?
I can take that question. The goal of our coalition and all of the organizations that make up this coalition is that we don't use gas as a resource for heating and cooking anymore. Gas is something that's poisoned. My family's water source in Pennsylvania is poisoned because of fracking. That's why I'm in this fight. So we want to shut down the fossil fuel industry as our long-term goal. That is something that is very dear to my heart and many hearts of the people that are involved in this coalition. So we don't want to think of it in terms of, you know, who would supply our gas if National Grid was around. We want to think of it more as, how do we take our power from this multi-billion, multinational corporation that is mandating and forcing us to have gas for heating and cooking? And how do we take the power away from them? Because we know that we can cook with many different types of things that are not dangerous to our health and safety. We can use induction stoves that can be mandated by our Department of Buildings and our state. We can use geothermal technology to heat and cool our buildings. And that is something that National Grid wouldn't profit off of. And that's why they lobby against using renewable energy resources. They will tell you, as we mentioned in the greenwashing portion of this presentation earlier, that they are doing everything for sustainability and energy efficiency and wind and solar. But the fact is they are a fossil fuel company, and you know, we want to put them out of business. They know we want to put them out of business. They've named our coalition as one of their threats, and we are standing up to that. We say, yes, we don't want to be poisoned anymore for your private profit, and we need to move on. We do not want to be, you know, in the 21st century digging the ground up to burn it for energy when we know this is destroying our climate. It's causing massive fires all over the planet. It's causing massive superstorms, drowning, drought, refugee crises, all the things that the climate crisis starts. Begins with you know, fossil fuels and many other extractive economies that I named in the chat earlier. But let's think about how we're going to put out a company that profits off of, you know, the degradation of our climate, health, safety, and enforces more racism and an extractive economy.
That's really well said, Kim. Thank you. Katya has some questions. Katya wants to know, if the Public Service Commission blatantly disregarded the law, can their rate case decision be challenged legally in any way? Are there any mechanisms to reverse Public Service Commission decisions? Are there recall mechanisms for commissioners? Could Governor Hochul appoint someone else?
I can take that.
Are you
Oh, go ahead, Lee. Maybe one of us. Can take it.
Yeah, so there's a chance we could ask for a rehearing, which is the first step in appealing this, but unfortunately, it's the PSC that's rehearing it. And there are some risks that they could double down and create really bad precedent. We're still looking into this. We're talking to lawyers, but we really feel that the best way to challenge this decision is to build massive power through the gas bill strike, because they could actually wait an entire year before they even look at our rehearing, and then we could appeal and sue. So if we want to build power right now, the gas bill strike is the most important way. My understanding of the PSC is yes, that the new governor could appoint, actually, could it be bigger than 7? So it was originally 5 people. And just this year, one person left and Governor Cuomo appointed 3 people. So my understanding is that we could expand the PSC. As far as getting people, like recalling those people, I would guess that would have to go through the Senate, but Kim, I'm not sure. Do you know how is it possible to recall?
Yeah, I mean, if we wanted to make that a campaign to recall certain people, we did at one point have a People's Public Service Commissioner campaign. It would go through the Senate. And I put something in the chat about, we really want to get legislators active in pushing for a legislative hearing and bringing the Public Service Commission in for a legislative hearing. We have sent a letter to several legislators now, and we want to make them have to answer to our legislature about what they just did. So, and this is a statewide thing. There are 3 other rate cases actively happening in New York State right now, in Orange and Rockland, Central Hudson, and National Grid Upstate. National Grid, the UK company, bought Niagara Mohawk, which was the local utility there. And downstate here, it was Brooklyn Union Gas Company. So we know that, the name of the game for these corporate monopoly utilities is to cash out on the fossil fuel industry and injure us and get as much money as they can out of us. So right now we could use our legislators, and if any of you on this call right now are legislators and want to get active in helping us get committee chairs to call for a legislative hearing, that's something we're also thinking about.
And Teresa wants to know, isn't there merit for people outside the New York City National Grid customer base to join the strike somehow, as in people elsewhere, but still paying National Grid? Or is there a specific reason that that is not happening?
Yeah, there's a bunch of different utility territories, and Margot put a link in the chat earlier to a film that Lee and I made together on our desk about like how rate cases work, and it's fun and it's 2 minutes, but it's so there are people in other utility territories in New York State, and also like my mom is getting active in this. She lives in Pennsylvania and she knows that she's connected to what's happening in New York. Our water is poisoned, as I mentioned earlier. So, I mean, people can, if they're outside of the utilitarian. I saw a couple of people chatting that are in the Upstate National Grid territory called Niagara Mohawk. Should they start a strike? I don't know. Let's talk. Let's bounce some ideas around. What if we get the whole state to be like, we're not going to pay gas bills anymore. Let's stop fossil fuels. Part of this Q&A is idea sharing. So if you have some ideas, we would love to hear them and continue this conversation.
Yes, and also just want to highlight, somebody asked, will the phone banking come with a training? Absolutely. We're not just going to throw you into making calls and, just leave you. We're going to support you. We'll do a training. We'll give you a script. We'll answer any questions that you have. And same goes for the flyering as well. We will do a brief training and practice giving out flyers, practice giving your little spiel to people on the street and workshop it and get you comfortable. And someone wanted to know if they can't make any of the events this week, how can they get involved in the future, definitely following at No NBK Pipeline on social medias, on Twitter, Instagram. You can follow the other organizations as well at Frack Out of BK and Beeville Green. And you can also go to our website, nonbkpipeline.org/events, and that will have lists of all the events coming up. So we make sure that that is updated and that you have the latest information. Other organizers, are there questions that we did not get addressed either in the chat or verbally?
I saw one that was asking about Green Mountain Energy and also one that was talking about the Astoria power plant. So Green Mountain Energy is actually owned by NRG, which is the largest fossil fuel company in the United States. And they're specifically also trying to build a new frack gas power plant in Astoria. Sane Energy and other people are part of that coalition. And I think a lot of people did a really great job of explaining why Green Mountain Energy and other ESCOs aren't the answer, and that we really need to fight for public power, because these kind of middlemen that are to a certain extent, they're selling false solutions. And they're the same people that are also, on the other hand, supporting frack gas. So yeah, Green Mountain is owned by one of the largest fossil fuel companies in the United States.
I just noticed a question that I think was for the group, but it came to me, and it was about whether Andrew Cuomo is leaving at 1 minute after midnight. Do we know?
He's supposed
I don't know, but all I know is that Governor Cuomo left his dog behind at the mansion, and staff is taking care of this poor little beautiful dog.
All right, that feels like a good transition moment. Let's prep our breakout rooms, and if there are any remaining questions, y'all, feel free to put them in the chat. Thanks, Andra, for dropping some maps into the chat. And now we're gonna go into some brief breakout rooms, just spend like 5 minutes talking in a small group about how you want to get involved with this campaign. If you want to strike, if you have ideas of what good bar or restaurant you could leave flyers at, where you want to start door knocking, what organizations you want to tell about this strike and get involved, where you want us to do teach-ins. If you have ideas for an art piece or a musical theater performance or a dance party fundraiser, or anything that you want to do and feel inspired by in terms of stopping the North Brooklyn pipeline and getting people to strike, we'll talk about it in these breakout rooms.